The streets of Boston on a cold March evening in 1770 were thick with tension. The air was electric with unrest as the colonists simmered with frustration over British rule and increasing military presence. The narrow cobblestone lanes echoed with the murmurs of a people on edge, ready to ignite a powder keg of rebellion. Crowds gathered near the customs house, voices rising in anger, eyes fixed on the row of British soldiers stationed there. Each side stared at the other, a silent warning hanging between them like a storm cloud ready to burst. For months, the city had been a tinderbox. British soldiers, sent to enforce unpopular taxes and laws, had clashed repeatedly with Boston's residents. The Quartering Act forced citizens to house and feed soldiers, which only deepened resentment. Shops closed early, families whispered about their fears, and merchants felt the pinch of restrictions designed to fund an empire thousands of miles away. The colonists' sense of betrayal grew with every passing day. That evening began like many others, a mix of ordinary life and restless agitation. But an event was about to unfold that would change the course of American history forever. A young apprentice named Crispus Attucks, a man of African and Native American descent, was among those moving through the crowds. He was known as a man of courage, unafraid to stand up to authority. As voices grew louder and the crowd thicker, he found himself at the center of a brewing conflict. The British soldiers, tired and wary from days of provocation, kept their muskets close, but fingers off the triggers, for now. Suddenly, a snowball thrown from the crowd struck a soldier. This simple act unleashed a wave of chaos. Shouts erupted, sticks and stones were hurled, and the soldiers formed a defensive line. The tension snapped like a brittle twig. In the darkness, a single shot rang out, though it is still debated which side fired first. Panic spread instantly. Soldiers fired into the crowd, their muskets blazing in the chill night air. 5 men fell that night, including Crispus Attucks, whose death became a symbol of sacrifice for freedom. The colonists called it a massacre, a brutal and unjust attack on unarmed civilians. The British authorities insisted the soldiers acted in self-defense, but the damage was done. The event ignited passions across the colonies and was used by revolutionaries as proof of tyranny. Among those who would rise to prominence in the fallout was John Adams, a lawyer with a fierce commitment to justice. Though a patriot, Adams agreed to defend the British soldiers in court, believing in the right to a fair trial even for enemies. His defense highlighted the chaotic nature of the night, the provocation by the crowd, and the confusion that led to tragedy. The trial ended with 2 soldiers convicted of manslaughter, branded on the thumb, and released. This outcome did little to quell the anger simmering in Boston. Pamphlets, newspapers, and speeches spread word of the Boston Massacre, painting the British as cruel oppressors and the colonists as innocent victims. Paul Revere's famous engraving, a stark and dramatic depiction of the event, circulated widely, shaping public opinion. The massacre revealed deeper fractures in the relationship between the colonies and the British Crown. It stoked the fires of revolution, turning many who had been neutral or loyalist into ardent patriots. The event was a catalyst that would eventually lead to the Declaration of Independence and the birth of a new nation. But the story of that night and its aftermath is not just about politics and history. It is about ordinary people caught in extraordinary times, whose actions and sacrifices changed the world forever. The aftermath of that fateful night in March 1770 sent shockwaves through Boston and beyond. The city was a crucible of anger and grief, as news of the Boston Massacre spread like wildfire through the colonies. Families mourned the loss of sons and fathers, while townsfolk whispered anxiously about what the future held. Every tavern, meeting hall, and street corner buzzed with debates over justice and rebellion. The British soldiers involved in the shooting were immediately arrested and charged with murder. Yet despite the intense public outrage, the colonial legal system worked diligently to ensure a fair trial. John Adams, a respected lawyer and future president, volunteered to defend the soldiers. His choice shocked many patriots, but Adams believed firmly that the rule of law must be upheld, even in times of political turmoil. At trial, Adams painted a vivid picture of chaos and fear. He argued that the soldiers acted in self-defense against an aggressive mob that had been throwing snowballs, rocks, and insults. Witnesses testified about the confusion and how the crowd had provoked the soldiers relentlessly. Despite the emotional weight of the case, Adams's careful defense led to the acquittal of 6 soldiers. 2 others were found guilty of manslaughter and branded on the thumb as punishment, a sentence that was considered lenient. This outcome deepened the divide in Boston. Patriots saw the verdict as a miscarriage of justice, proof that the British system was rigged to protect soldiers who oppressed the colonists. Loyalists, on the other hand, felt relief and hoped it would ease tensions. But peace would not come quickly. The Boston Massacre had ignited a firestorm that could not be contained. Leaders like Samuel Adams and Paul Revere seized upon the event to rally support for the growing movement against British rule. Revere's engraving of the massacre, though not entirely accurate, portrayed British soldiers firing into a peaceful crowd, a powerful image that stirred emotions and spread across the colonies. This artwork became one of the most famous propaganda pieces of the era, shaping public perception and fueling calls for liberty. Across the 13 colonies, people began organizing protests, forming groups like the Sons of Liberty, who challenged British authority openly. The slogan, "No taxation without representation," echoed in town squares, capturing the essence of colonial grievances. Laws such as the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts, which imposed taxes on everyday goods, were seen as unjust because the colonists had no voice in Parliament. The massacre also revealed the limits of British control. The soldiers' presence, meant to enforce order, instead highlighted how fragile British authority was in the colonies. The local population's hostility made governance difficult, forcing Britain to reconsider its strategies. In the following years, more acts were passed, but with growing resistance, it became clear that something much larger was unfolding. Boston became a symbol of resistance. Its harbor, once a bustling center of trade, turned into a stage for defiance with events like the Boston Tea Party in 1773. Colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded British ships and dumped chests of tea into the water, protesting the Tea Act. This act of rebellion invited harsh retaliation from Britain, further escalating tensions. The Boston Massacre was the spark that lit the fuse leading to revolution. It demonstrated that colonial unrest could erupt into violence, and that the desire for self-governance was stronger than ever. The sacrifices of those who died were not forgotten. They were immortalized in speeches, writings, and memorials, inspiring future generations. The story of Crispus Attucks and his fellow victims became emblematic of the diverse makeup of the colonies. Attucks, a man of African and Native American heritage, is often remembered as the first martyr of the American Revolution. His death symbolizes how people from different backgrounds were united by the cause of freedom. The massacre also marked a turning point in colonial legal history. The trial demonstrated the importance of due process and the rule of law, even amid political chaos. John Adams's defense is remembered as a testament to justice and fairness, setting a precedent for the new nation. As the years passed, the seeds planted in Boston grew into a full-fledged revolution. The colonies declared independence in 1776, and the United States of America was born. The Boston Massacre remains a powerful reminder of how ordinary citizens standing up against injustice can change the course of history. Today, visitors to Boston can walk the Freedom Trail, visiting sites connected to the massacre and the Revolution. Museums and monuments honor those who fought and died for liberty. The event is studied worldwide as an example of resistance to oppression and the fight for democratic rights. The Boston Massacre teaches us that freedom often comes at a cost. It is a story of courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of justice. In the streets where it happened, the echoes of that night still remind us of the power of a united people standing against tyranny.